I had a few questions for you, but we already have one question coming in from the app through our wireless system. So maybe we want to start this, and we also do want to leave time for our public to ask questions to our speakers. I see a strange blue light glowing on our public. I hope it's not a nuisance to you. I don't know what that is, but I hope you're fine with that. Well, we have a question for Laurie Sexton from the US, a CPA from the US. What Laurie is saying is, during one of the parallel sessions yesterday, an S&P practitioner from Bulgaria gave an account of dominance of the big four firms in the audit market. Spain, Nigeria, and many other parts of the world have similar situations. What is the panelists' view on making joint audit between big four firms and S&P firm mandatory for all public interest entities as a way of strengthening the capacity of S&Ps and enhancing the overall quality of audit globally? Well, this is a very, I would say it's quite the talk of the day in Europe, because it would be a very familiar issue for our French friends, if we have any in the room. They have had joint audits for many years. And joint audit in the new audit directive, the European Union Audit Directive, is now a possibility. And actually, if a company chooses joint audit, the maximum duration of the audit assignment can be extended according to the audit directive. Clearly, the audit directive is in the process of being implemented in most EU countries, including the country that we are in. But it will be very interesting to see what use of the joint audit possibility will be done by individual jurisdictions in Europe as they approach the implementation of the EU audit directive. But we have a very varied global speaker panel here, so it might be very good to listen what each of you has to say on joint audit, and seen as a possibility to have Big Four and S&P audit firms work together and improve the quality of the audit. So I'll take the view from Wassim, starting on my left first.
Thank you. In Tunisia, there is mandatory joint audit, but for certain companies with certain size, not necessarily listed companies, but with a certain level of assets. But there is no provision on who is Big Four or not Big Four companies. But what we observed in our market, that this kind of provision helps to have non-Big Four offices or S&Ps to have some big companies and to enhance their resources and to enhance the quality of their audits. So I think that it is a good provision and it is implemented, and we are thinking also about adding this provision to have a Big Four and a non-Big Four, but it is still an idea.
Thank you, Wassim. And Monica, what's your view?
Well, I believe this is a situation that occurs worldwide, this impact on the market. In Brazil, in fact, audit is not mandatory to all companies. It's mandatory to listed companies, to big-sized companies, and to other specific regulated companies. And some other companies adopt or use audit due to their choices. Listed companies, big-sized companies, frequently choose the Big Four. It's not something official, it's not something mandatorily required, but what we observe is that the listed companies market usually or sometimes do not trust on the S&Ps. So it would be an alternative to work big audit companies and the other S&Ps together. Yes, it would be. In fact, usually this happens when we are auditors of components. So this is basically the major contact that happens between the Big Four and the other companies. But my major concern is that before anything, we as SMPs need to respect ourselves as professional companies and make ourselves respected by the market. So it would facilitate the space for all of us to be working together.
Thank you, Monica. And a view from Hong Kong, Albert?
I think there are two issues here. When we talk about a joint audit of a big firm, and if I read correctly, with an SMP firm, correct? I don't know what, because I haven't followed the debate that closely, what's happening over here. But if, let's say, the intention is to help bring up SMPs, in the audit of PIEs or public listed company, I have to question whether this will provide an efficient audit. Because, depending on the size of the SMP, in Hong Kong, we also got involved with this, but not mandatory joint audit. Let's say a small firm have a client that is going public. They will bring it to a big firm and say, I want to be a joint auditor. In order for me to recommend you, let's do a joint audit. Now, what happened there is normally the big firm would simply say, okay, we'll cut out this fee to you, but you don't have to do anything. But we call you a joint auditor. Because they find it generally that it is less costly and more efficient that they do all the work and give you a chunk of the fee and be done with it. So my concern is whether this mandatory, legal arrangement of requiring a joint audit between a big firm with a small firm actually makes sense. Because, you may have very different skill sets, very different experience level, that may not be that practical. Now, I said at the beginning, there are two issues here, because the other issue is what we call mandatory audit rotation, auditor's rotation. Because it's quite clear that when you have a mandatory auditor's rotation, that a Big Four audit being rotated out of a Big Four would normally end up with another Big Four, okay? Whereas a public listed company audit by a medium-sized firm, a second-tier firm, once you get rotated out, it will land it into the Big Four, clientele, and very rarely will a medium-sized firm pick up a Big Four rotated out client, and I think that has proven in countries like Italy. I think there are empirical evidence that shows that I think in Italy you have mandatory auditor's rotation, that when that was in place, that the dominance of the Big Four actually was more acute than before. So you need to take a look at both. You have mandatory auditor's rotation, and now you talk about a mandatory joint audit. I don't know if it makes sense. The market forces play tricks on us, so I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do, when you come to a joint audit, the mandatory joint audit arrangements.
Thank you, Albert. And is there an Australian way to joint audits or an Australian view on this? Diane, please.
Joint audits are extremely rare in Australia. I only know of one, and that was between a very small practitioner and a medium-sized firm as part of the transition. There's been a lot of discussion and debate and concerns raised about this question of joint audits. Concerns about practice risk management for the mid-tier firms as to whether they will have the access or capacity to review the portion conducted by a larger firm, and also the expertise that's required. So many of the joint audits relate to banks, insurance companies, and certainly for our firm and many of the mid-tier, we scope those out of our client acceptance. So that's proved to be quite difficult, and I don't think there's a lot of support for joint audits in Australia. That said, with some of the large public groups, which is not a joint audit, I think there's real opportunities for a division of work between subsidiaries and consolidations and the major sign-off. And we're seeing a lot more opportunity where SMPs can audit the subsidiary companies very cost-effectively and add value through those audits, and that feeds into the consolidation process. So I think that's the way we're favouring a division of labour, if you like, in Australia.
Thank you, Diane. And to close on this question and wrap up on this topic, just for your information, you might like to know that in Italy, in this country, for non-PIEs, non-public interest entities, where we have mandatory audits, the general rule is that the audit is performed by a board of 3 professionals working jointly. So it's actually a 3-way joint audit. So that's a general rule in Italy, which might be quite an exception, together with the habit of joint audits in France. But still, it might be interesting for you to know this. So we now really want to know, to listen to you and to get to hear from you and listen to your questions. So I do invite you to raise your hands and come to the stage. There are 2 mics here, or our kind hostesses can bring you the mic if you have a question you would like to ask from your seat. I see a hand raised down there. Yes. Can we please, can I kindly call on our hostesses to, oh yes, we have someone coming to the mic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Giancarlo. My name is Humberto Tedeschi from Brazil, and I'd like to make a question about the accounting professional valorization. We understand this to make better, to compete in this market where the price is always very high. The value is much higher. But I'd like to know, my question is, what we must do about the accounting professional valorization worldwide. That's it.
Thank you, Umberto, for your question. Thanks for coming to the mic. You may take your seat. Well, I'll pass this on to whoever would like to answer this. I think that the core of your question is how can we add value to the profession of accountancy? And this is a very good question. This is one of the core issues we are facing. We need to put value on our profession, and we need to make our clients understand that there is value in what we do, and that value is worth paying for. It is mostly, from my viewpoint, a public relations and communications issue. So I think that it would be great if IFAC and the member bodies, the member institutes of IFAC could work together and cooperate in trying to communicate to the clients and the marketplace how much the accounting profession is worth and how valuable can be the services of the accounting profession. Maybe each one of you in his own experience might have from his own country and something to tell us to this regard. So I understand Diane might wish to answer. Please go ahead.
When we look at the advisory services, particularly to grow businesses, I think in our practice we've been able to measure the value added to those clients by seeing successful clients. So many of their strategies depend on the advice that's provided by an accountant that feeds into their decision-making processes. So as you see your client, face challenges, overcome them, move on and grow, I think that's a clear indication of the value that's been added. And I know that certainly in our client base, that's really well appreciated and understood.
Thank you. And you, Albert, please go on.
I just want to share. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. I just want to share a recent experience that I had with a very good friend of mine. He works in Canada. He's head of the advisory service for one of the big 4 firms. He was back in Hong Kong, and we, had a bit of a discussion because everybody knows that the big 4 are going big time into advisory services. And I asked him, I said, exactly what do you do? What kind of advisory services are you offering to your Canadian clients? And I was expecting, some very sexy McKinsey type advisory work that he was going to tell me. But no, he was telling me that one part of his growing advisory service is to provide succession planning services to mid-tier firms in Canada. I said, wait a minute, you're trading into S&P territory. And they are. In fact, the big 4 firms, advisory services, it may sound very, very, exotic. But many of the advisory services that they provide are actually, what we are providing amongst S&Ps. We talk about trusted advisors. So he gave me an example. He gave me an example that they have developed a very, usable tool that they would approach, they do cold calls to companies that are successful. Now, when he talked about succession, I thought he was talking about, owners who are in their 50s, in their 60s, who want to sell out. And he said, no, that's not restricted to those. You're also talking to even young entrepreneurs who have made, very good money in the business they had, and they actually want to retire at the age of 40. Bless the Canadians. Canadians love to go sailing. They love to play golf and do outdoor activities. You do have entrepreneurs who actually want to get out of a business at the age of 40. And of course, then you have the very traditional succession issues, the father passing on to the son doesn't want to take up on those, so you need to hire professional managers. So I said, exactly what kind of advisory service to provide. So basically what he said is, well, you got to map out a situation that they could be able to sell their businesses. And by that he meant that you got to teach and help these owner managers to produce business plans, cash forecasts, cash flow forecasts, all the works, write a business plan and so forth. And, the more I listened to what he told me, I said, you guys are doing what we are doing all these years, trusted advisors. So I think, these are what we call value proposition. If you really want to deliver value to your clients, you don't have to look, have to look at another level. You just have to look at your client needs. What are they facing? What business cycle are they reaching, or their personal cycle, and what type of service and needs do they have? And I think around that, if you're able to come up with some innovative ideas to help client meet their challenge and needs, that's when you could avoid fee pressure. That's when you could provide what I call tailor-made solutions to clients, and that's what I call advisory service. And that's what the Big Four are calling them, advisory service, believe it or not.
Thank you, Albert. I think you were right on spot in answering this question. I would like to thank our Brazilian friend for raising this issue, because it is a big issue. It is something that we at the S&P Committee, we are aware of. The S&P Committee of IFAC is meeting here in Rome right after the World Congress on Friday and Saturday to discuss our strategic plan for the years to come, and that's something that we are already considering. IFAC has also an initiative which is called accountants and society, which is mainly a communication plan aimed at communicating with regulators, with stakeholders, with society at large, the importance of the accountancy profession. I know there's a long way to go, but we're on that path, definitely, and we are aware of that need. So thanks for mentioning this. I see more hands raised. So I see one here in the front. Can you please come to the mic? And we'll try to be quicker. So we'll be quick and try to take as many as we can. Please go ahead.
Hello, I'm from South Africa. My name's Kantha Naika, and I represent SAIPA, the South African Institute of Professional Accountants. I have a comment more than a question. I listened with interest about the pressure on fees, technology, the trusted advisor, the advisory services. I just want to let everybody know here that we've got a project that we are showcasing in the project gallery with 2 tools that look at specifically advisory services and the trusted advisor role. As an institute, we have developed products, very innovative products that help our members go to their clients and look at access to finance as well as small business management. So I think I'd like to invite other professional accountancy organizations as well as the panel to have a look at our project, and I have colleagues in the audience who can answer questions, and if you need to know anything more, you can chat to me. I'd give you more information. But thank you for the work that you do on the Knowledge Gateway. It's great.
Thank you very much to our South African friend. You're welcome to join the project gallery. Our friend at the mic down there, please go ahead.
Myself, Ranjit Agrawal from India. In various countries, including India, there is a limit on performance of audit by individual accountant by legislation, compulsory legislation. How this limit on number of audit to be performed by accountant can be calculated and justified by legislation.
Thank you. Albert, do you want to?
I understand in India, I understand that every CPA can not audit more than 10 publicly listed companies. Is that correct? That's the legislation in India. Now, if we apply that to Hong Kong, we would not have a business. Because, we simply, cannot afford to have one CPA audit not more than a number of listed company. So, it's the market-oriented situation in Hong Kong and elsewhere, I suppose. But, I like to see how India, the CPA firm can thrive in that environment.
And that differs from jurisdiction to jurisdictions, actually, clearly. Yeah. In Italy, there's a limit for listed entities. There's no formal limit for non-listed entities, but you are invited to self-regulate yourself in taking as many assignments and you are able to comply with. I've seen more hands raised. Can you please come to the mic?
Member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. My question is a little bit weird and is directed to Mr. Albert. Basically, in the presentations we have had, we have examined critically the roles of SMPs, and we have seen, he has talked about how companies probably outgrow, the services of SMPs. Now, my question is this. We have been talking about SMPs. If the clients that we have can outgrow our services, is it that SMP is stationed to just remain as SMPs? Because I want to believe that, as businesses, entrepreneurs set up their businesses, they want to grow. Are we not looking at how SMPs can grow out of being an SMP and break into the Big Four? That's question number one. Then secondly, with the expertise and the experience of Mr. Albert over the years, I'm sure he will have been able to come up with strategies, because what makes the Big Four is because they're the Big Four globally. But the truth of the matter is that, at national levels, with the resources available to SMPs, breaking into that Big Four at the national level I want to believe should be a focus of SMPs, such that, yeah, you can be big four globally, but nationally, we have SMPs that can break into that big four. So what are the strategies that you think can be put in place to let this happen? Because this will encourage SMPs to know that at least we can break in there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have a few seconds left, but it's important to answer.
The first part is there is obviously the situation as when your client outgrows you, then they go somewhere else, okay? And your question is, how do you keep pace? Now, the way I answer that is, I think every practitioner has to determine within himself or herself. You have to ask yourself, do you want to be a big firm or not? I certainly have asked myself that question. There's nothing wrong to be a small firm because you serve the clientele in that category. But if you are determined and you set your sight to become, to grow with your client and to be able to service their needs, then you must then have to go through the growth path, which is the path that I have chosen in Hong Kong. And over the years, in particular last 5 years, I have merged 4 times to become what I am today. So it's through merger and acquisition, through organic growth that you keep pace with your clients. Because there's no doubt that once your client gets to a certain size, they will go outside, they go global. And once they go global, their service requirement will become much more sophisticated than what an SMP could provide. And that's when you have specialization, you've got to acquire expertise, the experience, and so forth. So you can't do that by being small. So therefore, it has to be a very conscious decision that you would have to make yourself, whether I want to stay at this level or I want to compete with in a bigger situation. Now, on your second question, you said, okay, if you were then now become a medium-sized firm, how can you compete effectively with the Big Four on a global level? But let me share with you this. Even the Big Four, when they talk about being global, they always say that they are globally represented, but they always say they act locally. You look at other situations, HSBC, for example, the way they advertise themselves, they say, we are a global bank, but we act locally. So in professional services, you must deliver your service locally, okay? So if you were a very large local firm and you have clients overseas, how do you do that? You do it by strategic alliance. You do it through networking, whether you're going for the mid-tier networks, the lower networks, it doesn't matter. So find your network, or even if your clients are predominantly going to a particular jurisdiction, you just have to get a strategic alliance with a firm in that particular locality. So that's how you will be able to compete quite effectively, even with the biggest firms. It's because if you have local knowledge, your local knowledge can and will enable you to service your client requirement locally.
So thank you very much, Albert. I think we are a bit late now, so that was very interesting to have this insight from you. We are not able to take more questions right now. We have to close. For those of you who would like to make their voice heard, you can still tweet at IFAC_SMP, and there will be thousands of people joining you in tweeting and responding to your tweets. I would like to thank you all very much for being with us today, but before you leave, there is one last thing we have to do. I would like to say thanks to our guests and our speakers, and on behalf of the organizing committee, we have a small memento for them. If our kind hostesses can please come to the stage with the mementos. And we would like to thank them. Yes, you can stand up, of course. Thank you. So this is for you, Wassim. Thank you very much on behalf of the organizing committee. Thank you very much, Monica. Thanks for your contribution. And thanks a lot, Albert, for being with us today. Thank you very much. And to you, Diane, as well. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And I guess there's a thank you for your host today as well. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much. Thanks to you all today. I hope you'll enjoy the World Congress, keep enjoying it, and also find the time to enjoy this beautiful city, Rome. Thank you very much. See you all later. Goodbye.